The world had not always belonged to the Volturi. Before their names were whispered with reverence and fear among vampires, before Volterra became the epicenter of their power, they were nothing more than three immortals with ambition. But ambition is more lethal than immortality itself. Aro, Marcus, and Caius were not the first vampires to exist, but they were the first to understand something fundamental. Power is not just strength, it is control, and they were willing to take it. Aro was the first. He did not remember exactly how many centuries had passed since his transformation, but his thirst for knowledge burned more intensely than his thirst for blood. He had always been a man of patience, someone who studied his prey before attacking. He was not simply interested in feeding like the rest of his kind. No, he wanted more. He wanted to understand. He was born in Greece, in an era where gods were still worshipped and men feared the shadows. His creator had abandoned him without explanation, like so many other newborns doomed to wander without guidance. But Aro was no ordinary newborn. He learned. He discovered that his gift allowed him to see the thoughts of others with just a touch, not read them, possess them. Every mind he touched became part of his own history. Every vampire he encountered gave him a new fragment of the world. And then he realized the truth. Vampires had no order. They were predators without purpose, hunting in the dark, destroying each other without structure, without rules, a waste of immortality. And Aro understood something that would change the fate of his species. If no one ruled over vampires, then he would. But he could not do it alone. Marcus was next. Aro found him on the coast of what is now Italy. He was a warrior, turned against his will, but with a coldness that made him unstoppable in battle. And he had something else, a gift. Marcus could see the connections between living beings, not just loyalty or love, but the invisible bonds that tied them together. He knew who would trust whom, who would betray whom. Aro saw his value immediately. Together, they would not only dominate vampires, they would understand them. They would shape the future. And so, their alliance began. But the conquest of a world is not achieved by brilliant minds alone. It requires strength. Caius came to them differently. He hated. He had been turned young, younger than most vampires could normally survive. And unlike Aro, who saw immortality as a gift, and Marcus, who endured it with resignation, Caius saw it as a curse. He lived in barbarity, in the endless war between vampire clans that destroyed each other without reason. He saw werewolves slaughter newborns as if they were mere prey. He saw humans discover their kind and hunt them in the night. To him, the world had only one truth. Either you control or you are destroyed. Aro found him on a battlefield covered in corpses. Caius did not speak much. He did not need to. But when Aro offered him something greater than senseless violence, when he offered him a purpose, he accepted. The three began as an alliance, a group of vampires with a common goal. But soon, they became something more. An empire. Volterra became their refuge, and then their fortress. They recruited the most powerful, those with gifts, those who could be shaped. Didimi, Aro's sister, with her ability to make anyone feel absolute happiness. Chelsea, who could manipulate the loyalty of vampires. Jane and Alec, the twins turned into living weapons. Each one was chosen with precision. Each one became a piece of their strategy. And when their strength was sufficient, they did what had to be done. They eradicated the clans that opposed them. They annihilated those who refused to submit to their rules. They destroyed those who wanted the world to remain in chaos. The Volturi were born in blood and fire, and when the war ended, they were the only thing left standing. But victory always comes at a cost. Aro understood this the day Marcus stopped fighting. The day Didimi, the only person Marcus ever loved, mysteriously died. No one knew how. No one saw who did it, but Aro mourned her loss as if it were his own. And from then on, Marcus was never the same. The bonds he saw, the ones that gave meaning to the world, disappeared before his eyes. The love he felt left him empty. And Aro comforted him. He promised him that his pain would not be in vain, that they would build a world where there would never again be unnecessary losses, where no vampire would ever suffer what they had suffered, a world under their control. And so, the Volturi became the law. They were not kings, they were gods, and no one could defy their will. No one. Until a family in the small town of Forks broke the balance. And for the first time in centuries, Aro feared that his reign might fall. Aro walked slowly through the halls of Volterra, his footsteps echoing on the cold marble. The shadows of the throne room stretched as the sun descended on the horizon, dyed a deep red as if reflecting the blood spilled for his empire to exist. He had spent centuries building the order that now dominated the vampire world. Every piece had been placed with precision. Every law, every rule, every execution, everything was necessary. But stability is always fleeting. And Aro could feel it in his bones. His reign was in danger. Caius entered the room with his usual fierce energy, his black cloak billowing behind him. "We can't keep ignoring it," he said in a harsh voice. Aro smiled gently. "My dear friend, ignoring what exactly?" Caius narrowed his eyes. "The Cullens." The name hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Marcus, seated on his throne, did not react. He rarely did these days. But Aro did not need his approval. He knew Caius was right. The Cullens were a problem, not just because of their absurd diet, not just because they clung to an ideology that made them weak, but because they challenged the balance the Volturi had built. A strong clan with no intention of submitting, a clan with talented members, and now with a hybrid. Aro sighed and lowered his gaze. "I understand your concern, Caius, but they haven't broken any rules. Yet." Caius stepped closer, his fury palpable. "They will, and when they do, we must be ready." Aro looked at his old friend with patience. He knew what drove him. Caius didn't want order. He wanted extermination. He was not a leader like Aro. He did not understand that ruling was not just about punishing, but shaping the world according to his will. But Aro could not allow his ambition to blind him. Not yet. "Tell me, dear friend," he said in his most affable tone, "why do you think the Cullens have survived this long?" Caius frowned. "Because we have allowed them to live." Aro smiled. "No, because they have learned how to play the game." The game. It was what had kept the Volturi in power for millennia. It was not brute strength. It was not terror. It was manipulation. Aro never attacked without reason. He never moved without ensuring the strike was lethal and justified. Because when you rule, open wars are the last option. No, first you must isolate. You must weaken. You must turn them into the enemy in the eyes of everyone. And the Cullens, with their insistence on being different, on living by their own rules, were doing the work for him. He didn't need to destroy them yet. He only needed to wait. Wait for them to get into trouble. Wait for a single mistake to make the vampire world look at them with suspicion. And when that happened, the Volturi would crush them without question. Marcus, who had remained silent until then, lifted his gaze for the first time in a long while. "If you're wrong, they could destroy us." Aro looked at him gently. "Dear Marcus, if I am wrong, then perhaps it is fate." Marcus did not respond, but Aro knew what he was thinking. Fate did not exist, only the will of the powerful, and Aro had spent millennia ensuring that his was the only one that mattered. But then, the future changed. Alice Cullen arrived in Volterra. A newborn girl defied Jane. A hybrid that should not exist became his greatest threat. And for the first time in his existence, Aro saw a future where the Volturi could fall. But patience is an art perfected by immortality, and Aro never leaves a game unfinished.